Good morning, sleepyhead. So, you want to improve your sleep? Well, lucky for you, I have ADHD, and I recently went into a hyper-focus mode, and 4 hours of Andrew Huberman podcasts later, I've picked up a few things. So, if you want to learn about the sciencey shit behind sleep and how to optimize it, then stick around. If you just want the practical steps, then you can feel free to skip to here. But I do have to say you won't get nearly as much out of the video, and you probably won't understand the practical steps or why we're actually doing them, but up to you. So, first of all, there's two chemicals I want you to know about. So, the first one is melatonin. You've probably heard about it. And the second one is called adenosine. So, melatonin, everybody's heard of it, is essentially the hormone that your body releases after it gets dark, like after the sun goes down, and it allows your body to fall asleep. People think of it as like the sleep hormone. Then there's adenosine. When you first wake up, the levels of adenosine in your system are very low. But as the day progresses, they slowly rise to the point where it's 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and they're very high. So that's the drug that actually is responsible for making you feel tired, for kind of craving sleep. So adenosine makes you feel tired, and then melatonin allows you to actually get to sleep. Now I want to talk about how it wakes you up in the morning and gets you energized and ready for the day ahead. Again, there's two main chemicals that are responsible for this, and they are cortisol, which is your stress hormone, and then norepinephrine, which is like a neurotransmitter. So when you wake up in the morning, your body gets like a pulse of cortisol and norepinephrine, which wakes you up, makes you feel alert, and really just prepares you physiologically for the day. So for those of you who've watched Andrew Huberman, or maybe you paid a little bit of attention in 10th grade science, you might know some of this, but those two functions in your body, adenosine and melatonin, so making you feel tired, and then cortisol and norepinephrine waking you up in the morning, those two functions are synced, right? They're on a timer. They work as a team, right? So when the sun goes down, that melatonin release starts the timer for the cortisol pulse and the norepinephrine pulse when you first wake up. And then when that cortisol and norepinephrine pulse goes off in the morning, it sets the timer for 10 to 14 hours later when that melatonin spike kind of happens. So if you mess one of them up, then it throws the other one out of sync and your sleep is ruined. This kind of dynamic is really what regulates your sleep-wake cycle, essentially. Obviously there's a lot more that goes into it, but that's all you really need to know to whatever. Anyway, a lot of what I want to cover in this video is how to regulate that and get that working as it should and really get the best sleep possible. So basically it's really important to regulate these two chemical releases in order to get a consistent sleep-wake cycle and optimize your sleep. Now I want to go into some of the practical steps. So the first thing, and maybe the most important, is sunlight. So you need to be going outside and getting sunlight directly into your eyes as soon as possible after waking up. Basically you have these cells in your eyes that kind of perceive light and transmit that signal to your brain, which is actually what regulates the release of those hormones. So how there's kind of the world looks different at different times of day. The light is very different at midday than it is at 5 a.m. in the morning, when the sun first rises. That quality of light is very different. So there's a particular quality of light which kind of occurs within 3 hours of sunrise, which the signal of which needs to be transmitted to your brain in order to regulate that kind of cycle of the cortisol pulse and then the melatonin spike. So make sure you're waking up within 3 hours of sunrise and going outside and getting that morning sunlight into your eyes, because that's really what regulates your body's clock, circadian rhythm. So while we're on the topic of light, you also need to limit the amount of blue light that's in your environment after dark. So basically TV, any screen, right, emits blue light, and it's a very similar light frequency to the morning sunlight. And remember, that morning sunlight plays a role in telling your brain and body, okay, it's time to wake up. If you're getting blue light into your eyes after the sun goes down, it basically suppresses the melatonin release because your body's like, hey, it's the morning, or hey, it's the middle of the day, so why would we wind down for sleep? No, we're gonna wake up. So it's really important that you're not on any screens or anything like that without either a blue light filter, blue light blocking glasses, something like that. And also it's just good practice to stay off screens 1 to 2 hours before you go to bed to allow that melatonin spike to occur so you can actually fall asleep. Looking at blue light after the sun goes down tricks your body and your brain into thinking it's still daytime, and that'll suppress the melatonin release, meaning you won't be able to fall asleep, even if your adenosine levels, the thing that makes you feel tired, are really high. Like, you can't just be scrolling on Instagram or TikTok or doing fucking Snapchat streaks or whatever it is you fucking losers do. You can't just be doing that for like an hour on your bed before you go to sleep and then just put your phone down and expect to roll over and fall asleep. It doesn't work like that. Not a smart move. Yeah. The next thing is your sleep environment. Research has shown that the best environments for sleep is a cold, dark, and quiet room. Surprise, surprise. So in my room, I live in Australia, right? And it's summer at the moment, so most nights you're trying to fall asleep and it's still like 27 degrees and like 80% humidity. So it sucks. So a cool room is not really something I can achieve. But if you have air conditioning in your room, or you live in a cooler climate, then that's great. The optimal temperature for sleep is like 16 to 18 degrees Celsius, but the cooler the better, basically. In terms of light, I have curtains. I don't know if you can see that, but that like basically make my room pitch black. That's an easy fix. You need to get like one of those like sleep mask things that you put on your face and it's just like, you know what I'm talking about. Or curtains or blinds or something that will block out the light. That's a really easy fix. In terms of quiet, it's a bit contradictory because white noise is actually really good for sleep. So I have a fan, just the noise of that some people hate it, some people drives them crazy, but majority of people, having some kind of like ambient white noise in the background, but obviously very quiet, like something like a fan. Something like a fan is perfect. Try to have a cool, dark, and quiet environment. Another note on sleep environment, which I never hear talked about, is this. Make sure the only thing you're doing in your bed is sleeping. Our brains are very associative. Our brains learn to associate different circumstances with different functions. Basically, you want to train your brain to associate lying in bed with falling asleep. People are like, duh, but then they'll sit on their bed all day watching Netflix or scrolling on Instagram or whatever it is. And they're training their brain to expect stimulation and entertainment in the location that they should be shutting down thoughts and everything and falling asleep. So, train your brain to associate lying in bed with falling asleep. It's that simple. The next thing I want to cover is how your diet can impact your sleep and the timing of like when you eat. Now listen up, you coffee fiends. So basically, caffeine has a really interesting relationship with adenosine, where it basically binds to the adenosine receptor. So you can think about it like caffeine kind of takes adenosine's parking spot. What that means is, that's really the reason you feel energized when you drink coffee or an energy drink or anything caffeinated, is because it kind of blocks that chemical that makes you feel tired from interacting with your brain or your body. So yeah, caffeine essentially blocks adenosine from binding to its receptor and then having its effect on the body, which is why any sort of caffeinated substance or beverage, you feel energized. But when the caffeine wears off, the adenosine rushes in and binds to that receptor like a lot more aggressively than it otherwise would, which, hence the caffeine crash. People have very different caffeine tolerances. For example, some people might be able to have a cup of coffee at 9 p.m. right before they're about to fall asleep. and they're fine. Whereas some people, if they have a coffee after like 10 a.m. in the morning, it's gonna be like, they can't sleep that night. So it's just, you're gonna have to experiment and find out when you're okay to be drinking caffeine and when it's like too late in the day. That's just up to your own personal biology. But yeah, just figure that out and make sure you're not messing yourself up with too much caffeine too late in the day. The next thing is try to avoid eating 1 to 2 hours before bed, because your brain can't switch off properly while it's digesting. If you eat right before you go to bed, it can kind of mess up your sleep quality. Personally, I've struggled with that because, I don't have a great appetite and I have a very fast metabolism, which means lots of small meals throughout the day is how I prefer to eat instead of 3 or 4 big meals. Anyway, my point is, if I have a meal 2 hours before I go to bed, by the time I'm getting ready for bed, I'm hungry again, and that impacts my ability to fall asleep. So if you have a similar problem, I've come up with a genius solution that's worked really well for me, which you can try. So, my genius solution. I have a handful of nuts about 30 minutes before bed. It seems very simple, but it's really effective and really smart for 2 reasons. Number 1, nuts are small, so they don't take up much room in your stomach, and it doesn't take long to digest, so you're not getting that negative impact on your sleep. But 2, nuts are really satiating, but while they don't take long to digest and it's not a large amount of food, nuts are high in calories and they're high in protein. They make you feel full without filling up your stomach. Second reason why it's genius is because nuts are, particularly almonds, Brazil nuts, and pistachios, they're all really high in melatonin, which is sleep hormone. Alright, so this is day 2 of recording this video because my family got home from their walk halfway through recording last time. Moving on. The last thing is routine. A nighttime routine is just as important as a morning routine. You spend your whole life hearing people tell you that morning routines are super important and that you need to be focused on the morning because it's the most important part of the day, and that's true, completely. I put a lot of emphasis on my own morning routine. I think if you want to be productive and successful, then a morning routine is a key part of that. But you can think about a nighttime routine as like a pre-morning routine. You can't have a good morning routine without a good nighttime routine because you won't be able to wake up, you'll be tired, and the quality of your just general life output the next day is going to be worse if your sleep is bad. So if you're scrolling TikTok for like an hour, just lying on your bed before you go to sleep, 2 things. First of all, why the fuck do you have TikTok? What are you, 12? And second thing, you're an idiot because you've just been blasting your brain with hyper-stimulating content at 3 videos per second for like an hour and then expecting to just be able to roll over and go to sleep. Come on, you're smarter than that. That goes against the rules of pretty much everything I've just been talking about this whole video. The 2 most important things in terms of winding down physically are destimulating your brain and lowering your heart rate. Have a nice relaxing shower, read, do some breathing, all of these things, that's what I would recommend. Those are the sort of things I do, but it's very personal, everybody's different, so just find some things that work for you and help you wind down mentally and implement those into, a few step routine before you go to bed. In terms of getting your mind to shut the fuck up, I'd say journal and meditate. Make sure your mental winding down doesn't impact your physical winding down. I'll explain what I mean. So, to me, going outside and punching a heavy bag really helps it clear my head. Kind of gets rid of those racing thoughts, just calms me down mentally. But, obviously that gets your heart rate up and stimulates your brain, and so just be aware of that some things can contradict each other. Final point, which is very important, is having a consistent bedtime. Having a consistent scheduled bedtime every night is actually a lot more important than having a scheduled wake-up time every day. Say you don't set an alarm, ever. I know all the Andrew Tate fans are going to lose their shit. Oh, you got to be hustling, you're minus 1 minute sleep. What? Shut the fuck up. If you don't have an alarm in the morning, your body will wake up when it's ready to wake up. Presuming you do all the steps for creating a good sleep environment, dark room, quiet room, you're not getting woken up by any external an external factor, your body will wake up when it's ready. And that's actually the more healthy way to do it. Unfortunately, with school, work, which is the reality for most people, that's not possible. But the point is that a bedtime is really important. For me, that's 9 p.m, but again, it's up to you. As long as you're in bed for 8 to 10 hours and you're making sure to get that morning sunlight into your eyes, doesn't matter. If you've watched this far in the video, thank you so much. Genuinely, I hope this helped, and I hope that I can improve with every video. If you want to see some more of this content, as well as some vlogs, fitness videos, general self-improvement content, and philosophy, then consider subscribing.